Looking for an escape to nature? Ready to embrace wellness? From yoga and detox spa retreats to awakening journeys and corporate team building, let Museflower Retreat and Spa be your muse. Whether you seek relaxation, transformation, or space to hold your own retreat, Museflower is here for you. Nestled in peaceful Chiang Rai, Thailand, Museflower Retreat and Spa is an all-inclusive sanctuary for healing, learning, and natural living, offering yoga, meditation, wellness, or simply a mindful green space to recharge. You are welcomed. Immerse yourself in holistic retreats and workshops designed to awaken your creative energy. Enjoy organic vegetarian cuisine, spa therapies, and creative workshops, all in a tranquil, eco-conscious setting. Founded by wellness expert Tanya Ho, Museflower Retreat and Spa is designed to nurture creativity and well-being. You don't have to be a yogi to feel at home here. Come as you are. Wellness never felt so good. Book your retreat today at Museflower Retreat and Spa and use code REN10, that's WREN 10, to get £10 off your first booking. Welcome to the Inquisitive Rent Podcast. I'm Sha, your host. Join us as we explore diverse perspectives on the human experience, offering insightful interviews and deep reflections on philosophy, spirituality, psychology, from a bird's eye view on the essence of being. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Inquisitive Rent Podcast with me, Sha, your host. Today I welcome Christine Stoddard, who's a filmmaker, performer, and a TV host, and she's also named one of Brooklyn Magazine's top 50 most fascinating people. What an accolade. Some of her best-known projects include the films Serena's Gallery, Mia Buella, Queen of Nightmares, and the talk show Badass Ladyfolk. You can also see her on her YouTube channel, Stoddard Says. She also hosts the comedy TV show Don't Mind If I Don't with Aaron Gold. Her work has appeared in Bustle, Native Lens, the New York Transit Magazine, the Brooklyn Rail, the Latino Film Market, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Cosmopolitan, and others. She creates under her studio, Quail Bell Press and Productions. Christine joins me today to talk about her work, what it's like to live in Brooklyn, and also what she has planned for the future. I really like talking to creative people to find out what their creative process is, how their minds tick, and was this always a part of their lives? So I'm happy to speak to Christine today. Let's welcome Christine to the show. Christine, lovely to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Great. So we got loads to talk about. But, I really want to start out with your writing because you've got your hand in loads of different parts. I mean, you're a photographer, you're a filmmaker. You also design books for covers and things like that. You're an illustrator. How did you know you had a knack or a talent for this kind of creativity?
I was very fortunate that early on I had teachers who encouraged me, and that includes my parents. I definitely include my parents among my teachers. I just had a really robust public school experience. I had an amazing third grade teacher, Ms. Mitchell, and she wasn't, necessarily an arts focused teacher, but she did bring art into everything. And now as an adult, I've learned a little bit more about pedagogy for children, and I guess she had some Montessori training, maybe some Reggio training. But really, even when we had science lessons, we would do something hands-on, make something, write stories, perform skits. She built this incredible galaxy when we were learning about the planets. She made something out of garbage bags, but you wouldn't have guessed, right? Like parents would come visit, but it was this whole bubble, the space bubble that you could actually crawl into. She had fans blowing to make the garbage bags fan out so that they would stay open for us to go inside. And then as a class, we made little paper mache planets, we made stars, made all kinds of goodies, and we had to write stories related. So we did our scientific reports, right? We do some research and things that were very much nonfiction. But then on the creative writing side of things, she'd have us come up with poems and short stories. But she was definitely one of the fabulous teachers. Dr. Lyon was another one. And I know he was Montessori trained because that's something that he talks about. Even back then when I was a kid, he'd mention it. Yeah, so by the time I got to college, I was already certain, okay, I want to do some kind of creative writing or fine arts, and hopefully if I can bring the two together. And I did. I ended up transferring to an art school that did allow me to do that, and take classes in lots of different things. But I had to work on pretty ambitious projects. So by the time I was done with college, I'd already professionally screened some of my film and video work, published some of my writing and illustration. And yeah, I really lucked out. I had to work very hard. I was constantly working, starting in high school. I always had some kind of part-time job or freelance work that amounted to part-time. So by the time I graduated from college, I had this whole portfolio that made me marketable and let me go after things.
That's incredible because you also went to journalism school as well. So
I'm in journalism school now.
are you?
Yeah. So in some ways kind of delayed, but I went to college, I worked for a bit, then I got my MFA, continued working while doing my MFA, and I earned my MFA from the City College of New York in 2019. And when I graduated, they said, hey, you are getting the scholarship. You're one of three students. They chose two undergrads and one grad student. And actually, you get to do more school if you wish. So I had my eyes set on a couple different institutions in New York where I was already living. But after doing an MFA, wanted to take a year off. And of course, with the pandemic hitting, the timing didn't work out for me to go back to school after that 1 year like I had imagined. But the upshoot was that I got a couple different grants. One to work on my first feature film, Sirena's Gallery, which is now streaming on Amazon and Tubi, and then to work on my first full-length play, Mi Abuela, Queen of Nightmares, which has had a couple stagings, and you can watch the fully produced show on YouTube now as well. So if I hadn't waited, if I had gone straight to school, those projects might not have happened. So now I'm back at school. I'll be done in August. It's a 1 year program in documentary film, and then I say I'm done with school forever. But we'll see. But yeah, it feels like a good place to stop.
But this is a prime example of someone who already has some what I would call born gifts. You know, you were born with something there, or else it wouldn't have resonated with you. You know, they make us do all sorts of things at school, but
Yeah.
we don't all go into, I played the clarinet at school, but are you kidding? No way. Yeah, it obviously was there within you, but you carried on right up to the point where you went to school, you're still in school, and you're using both knowledge, brain and creativity. So what would you say to people who sometimes we find artists, especially, it's one of the reasons I love to interview creative people, who know they've got a gift, but they never go into school or learn or anything. I guess, is there a space for both?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can certainly teach yourself a lot. I started noticing gaps in my education in college, things that I wanted to learn and that I noticed I wasn't getting in classes, so I did independent study with one professor, for instance. I would just read things on my own, watch things on my own. And by the time I did my MFA, YouTube was a lot more popular for educational content. And for instance, it wasn't until this year that I took a painting class, but I started painting in a professional sense, like exhibiting during my MFA. Yes, I drew as a little girl and I continued drawing in college, but I didn't really paint until I was an adult. And I learned all of my initial painting skills from looking at a lot of art, going to museums, going to galleries, looking at books and magazines, and watching YouTube tutorials and figuring out, oh, so if I want to do that with acrylic, I have to do this. If I want to do that with watercolors, I have to do that. Yeah, but I would say what the formal education has given me is networking, encouragement, real-time peer feedback. And it doesn't mean that I have agreed with everything, of course not. But if you just rely on internet communities, it can be hard to weed out all the different comments. And in some cases, you might not be getting any kind of feedback, even troll feedback, right? You might not be getting anything. So being in a classroom, yeah, a lot, especially one where you do have to produce and you have to show your work or present your work in some way, and professors and students are commenting on it. Yeah, there's a lot I don't like about academic models, but I've definitely appreciated being in person. And that was one of the reasons why, once the pandemic hit, I knew I could have gone for that second master's and done Zoom school. But for me, it didn't make a lot of sense personality wise. I don't think I would have gotten as much out of it. Yeah. But no, I definitely encourage people, like on my mother's side of the family. Really, I'm the first one to achieve this level of education. Most people have not necessarily graduated from high school, and there are many reasons for that. But I I do think that with coming up in a middle class setting in the United States as a woman, I've just had so many opportunities that were not available to my mother, for instance, and she always pushed me to really appreciate what I have, and I've tried to do my darndest to go after things that in her wildest dreams a woman would not have been able to do when she was growing up.
Yes, and is that a Colombian background? Am I correct? In
My mother's Salvadoran. She's from El Salvador.
Salvadoran.
Yeah, yeah. I go to Colombia for my master's, so I can see why the confusion.
Right. Okay. But you make a good point about that. A lot of times, and life has changed. A lot of times, our parents, our grandparents didn't have the opportunities we had. And in a
Right.
way, it's great. It's a representation. It's confirmation that our world is growing. It's expanding. So we do want to improve, don't we? But creativity is one of those things. I don't know. For me, the jury's still out on if you can learn how to sing like Whitney Houston. I'm not convinced just yet. I think you're either born with something. I think you can practice, hone your skills, but I'm not sure. What are your thoughts about that? Because we had a lot of reality shows, didn't we, a few years ago? Britain's Got Talent, American Idol, X Factor over here, lots of different things going on.
Yeah, I am a strong believer in hard work. I know it sounds biased because I was talking about all the ways I was nurtured as a little girl, and there are many things I've been doing since I was a child. But I think developing confidence and honing your voice and your style and doing something over and over and over again, that takes a lot of practice. Whether it takes formal training or education, I don't think that's necessarily true, but definitely doing something over and over again. And some people, like, they don't know what they have, right? If they do have these natural born talents, it might take the right teacher or coach or whomever, the right person to show them, you have this, you need to nurture it, you need to go after this, or at least give it a try. Um, yeah, I guess a part of me that doesn't like the idea of, oh, it's just natural born talent, is that it discounts hard work.
Yes.
And then I went to art school. I've seen so many incredibly talented people who, once they graduated, just stopped doing it for any number of reasons. They were burnt out. They didn't want to do it anymore. They decided they wanted to go after something that was going to pay them more money more quickly. um, and yeah, I think you can be born with something, but you need to keep refining it. And if it's going to be a part of your life, if you do give it up completely at some point, then that it can be hard to get back to, is something I've observed. It can be hard to catch up to the point where you want to be.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're talking more about nurture. So you can be born with something.
Yeah.
Nurture it, take care of it, and yeah.
Yeah, for
About
sure.
Serena's gallery, because you've already referred to it before. So what's happening with that? How did that get off the ground even?
Yeah, I mean, during my MFA, one of the blessings from that program was that I had access to a gallery that was on campus I had it for more than 2 months. It was almost 3 months, where I could do almost whatever I wanted with it. So I was there almost every day during the week and just fiddled around with this and that. And my my ultimate exhibition ended up being a 45-minute film. There were like photo paintings on the walls. There was a sculptural installation, and there was a performance that I did a couple of times, a live performance. And there were even books that had some of my writings and poems. It was very involved, very involved. But what I'm getting at is spending all that time in that gallery had me thinking about, well, what must it be like to be a gallerist, especially in New York City, which is such an incredibly competitive and expensive place with an art market. Some places are expensive, but doesn't necessarily mean that they have an art market, or much of one. Like, I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area, and there the art market is very small, even though it's a very prosperous area. So I started thinking about this character and developing her in my head, but it actually wasn't until the pandemic hit and I was stuck at home, like most people. I felt moved to create something, and I saw the different ways that people were using Zoom and photo booth and all kinds of laptop technology. And then I saw that in my home state of Virginia, 1708 Gallery, which is maybe best known for showing the work of Shepard Fairey. They've shown other people's work, but that's probably the number one name that people associate with that gallery. They had a residency for Virginian artists where you would get the gallery space to yourself 24/7 for 2 weeks. And because of the COVID guidelines, like, you couldn't have other people in there. It could only be you. I never even got to meet the staff in person, for instance. I only Zoomed with them. They were all working from home. We'd have to coordinate the very few times they had to come into the gallery to grab whatever paperwork or of theirs and then go back to their home offices. But with the timing of what I was thinking of during my MFA, with quarantine hitting, with me losing my studio space in New York City, being stuck at home, applying for this residency, finding out, oh, I get to go to Virginia and stay there for a couple of weeks and just work on this and basically find a way to make a film almost by myself and using remote technologies to involve other people. That's how it all happened. And then when I returned to Brooklyn after those 2 weeks, I sat on the footage. I didn't do anything with it for months, for almost a year, until March 2021. That's when I returned to it and started editing. It took about a month. I started at the end of March. So by May 2021, I was done editing the film. And then I just started submitting it all sorts of places. I had a Kickstarter. It, by August of 2021, premiered at the Bird Theater, which is this beautiful movie palace in Richmond that dates back to the 1920s. It was the first place in the American South to have sound with its cinematic showings. And right, like within a week of that screening, the Brooklyn Rail did a story on the film. Summerhill Productions sent me a distribution offer. And it did, take about 2 more years before the film was actually put on Tubi, Amazon, Hoopla, all those other places. Because I was told with the current market, people don't want to watch quarantine films quite yet. So by the time the movie really came out in 2023, there was more interest in that. Again, people had slowly started to recover from some of that like Zoom doom and being stuck at home all that time. But there were a lot of things about the project that happened slowly, but then once it was done, things picked up, and it was around the time the world was opening up again, so it made sense that things picked up.
Let's take a quick break from the show, and if you're enjoying today's episode of the Inquisitive Brain podcast, we'd love your support. Leaving a review, hitting that like button, and subscribing on your favorite platform not only helps us grow, but also ensures you never miss an inspiring conversation. Your comments mean the world to us. They spark new ideas, they connect us with incredible guests, and keep the energy flowing. Whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or watching on YouTube, or listening on your favorite platform, take a moment to share your thoughts and spread the word. Together, we're building a community that celebrates curiosity, growth, and transformation. Thank you for being a part of the Inquisitive Ring. Now, let's dive back into today's episode. Yeah, Zoom Doom. I like that. I hadn't heard that before. I love it. Now, we're going to talk about your next project, which is 5 Ways I Didn't Marry You. And if I can just tell you, I love the title.
Thank you.
So tell us about that. And before we move to that, viewers, listeners, you can still watch. Tell the viewers where they can watch on Amazon and Tubi.
So you can watch, the English pronunciation is Sirena's Gallery, Spanish Sirena's Gallery. You can watch it on Amazon. Really just type it into the search bar, and Tubi, it comes right up, same thing. Hoopla. I also have it on my YouTube at Stoddard Says, Stoddard. And frankly, that's the one that most directly benefits me. If you stream right there, that would be lovely.
Perfect. That link will be in the show notes, guys. So go over there now. Go to the YouTube first. Go to Stoddard Says first. Okay, 5 ways I didn't marry you. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so 5 ways I didn't marry you. I wanted to make a film that showed possibilities within relationships. So I have one character, Bernadette, I play her, and in each of these 5 scenes, she has a different lover, a different romantic partner, where conceivably marriage could take place in at this point in the relationship. And in each scene, you see different ways that maybe she ultimately will marry that person. We're not sure, but in that scene, she's not going to marry them. So it's not a series of declined proposals necessarily. But there are ways that you infer, okay, this relationship is ending now, or this relationship is not as serious as one person in the partnership thought it was, or at least one person here is not into the idea of getting married. So different scenarios, but it's like alternate reality, parallel universes. And yeah, I came up with the idea last fall, 2023. And I tapped my friend and collaborator, Thomas Dunn, to direct it. Because I knew, okay, I need somebody else to direct this idea. It's a little bit too ambitious, and the production is going to be a little bit too complicated for me to have the idea, be in it, and also direct everything. And I like Tom. I like his style. I like his way of thinking. And I knew that he could help me bring out some of the complexity and humor in these scenes, because he is also the director for several episodes of Don't Mind If I Don't, a comedy TV show that I work on with my boyfriend, Aaron Gold, real life boyfriend. He's also in 5 Ways I Don't Marry You. But 5 Ways I Don't Marry You, we filmed it in October. So we filmed it earlier this month. We had filmed one scene back in June, but the bulk of it was done this month over a 3-day weekend. Just went for it, needed to finish it. Now it's in post-production. I finally seen the rough cut, finally. Yes, a week and a half after we finished shooting it, I saw the rough cut, and that was edited by Jake Sterlin, who's another filmmaker in my circles. And it's going to be available on my YouTube. It's going to be available on my YouTube, Stoddard Says, this December. You'll be able to watch it. We will be submitting it to film festivals, but right now I'm toying with the idea of, hey, what happens if I post my films on YouTube before sending them to festivals? I actually did that with my short film Uncontested, which is another kind of artsy rom-com that I'm in with my boyfriend Aaron Gold, my friend Jake Barron, different Jake than the aforementioned Jake, filmed it. He was the cinematographer and he edited it. That's about a young divorcee who passes the time with making paper pulp, and eventually, after checking the mail day after day, gets her divorce papers. And there's more to it than that, but you're kind of in suspense about when she's going to get her divorce papers.
I'm already in suspense.
Yeah, but I posted that short on YouTube because there's this old, now I'm seeing it's sort of an outdated way of thinking that, oh, well, you should always submit something to festivals first, see about the film festival circuit, and then after it's sort of run its course, you can post it to YouTube for short films, right? But now so many festivals aren't running anymore. They closed because of the pandemic, like completely shut down, out of business. So many are virtual only, even still. Even now that the world's open back up, many of them are essentially Zoom festivals. And I figured, you know what? It's a short film that was low stakes, didn't really cost any money to produce. Let me just see what happens if I post it on YouTube. And now it has 6,000 views for like an artsy rom-com. It's not something that's going to be mainstream, but it has an audience. It got a following, and I promise to God, it would not have been seen by 6,000 people if I had submitted it to little film festivals here and there. And it did play at a couple festivals, but only after I put it on YouTube. I specifically looked for festivals that had rules where they said, okay, it's fine if something appeared online. We're going to have an in-person screening. Somebody hasn't necessarily seen something online. We're going to screen whatever films we select. And I think that is a very charitable approach. I think it's also just a smart business decision for film festivals, especially smaller ones, to think like that, because there is so much online, right? And it takes having editors and curators of different kinds to show you what a targeted audience might really want to see. So the festivals that showed the film uncontested, yeah, really, we had a good experience, got to do the Q&A, the panel, all of that, meet people in real life, see their reactions to the film in real life. But I'm so grateful that I posted it on YouTube first, because I've gotten so much great feedback that way. And same plan for 5 Ways I Didn't Marry You. It is much more involved than Uncontested. There is a much higher production value. There are many more actors involved, and more technical crew. But yeah, I want to see if Uncontested, which is a much smaller film, can get 6,000 views, then hey, what about 5 Ways I Didn't Marry You? And the title too. Title's catchy. I've been told it's catchy.
Definitely catchy. I really liked Bottled.
Thank you.
But it's about interpretation. So tell me if I interpreted it as a true family love connection. And because I was close to my granddad, that's kind of how it resonated with me. But of course, all art is interpretation, and we all see it differently. Am I close to what you kind of the intention of the film?
Yeah, for sure. So Bottled, I filmed at the end of 2019 and then edited in 2020. So it feels like a quarantine film in the sense that there's really only one actor, me. But it wasn't. It's just a coincidence. I had the idea to make a film that was very self-contained, where I really only had to rely on one other person, my voice actress, Denise Ademan, who also designed the music for the film, scored the music, I mean. And yeah, it was based off of my great uncle rather, who was like a grandfather to me. I didn't have a traditional grandfather in my life, but this man by proxy was very dear to me, very dear to my parents and my siblings. So when he passed away, it did feel like my grandfather had passed away. And I remember what spurred the idea for it was reading a few articles about some study at the time. My great uncle passed away in 2017. So that's around the time I was reading these studies about how talking to the dead can be good for you psychologically, even if logically, regardless of spiritual beliefs, logically, they might not hear what you're saying and they can't talk back to you, or at least talk to you in a way a living person can. It can be good for the soul it's almost like writing a diary, right? A diary entry. So that's how I came up with the idea of Bottled, is what would it be like? What would it do for me if I could talk to somebody I loved who passed away? And if I could send him a message, what would it be? And does it even matter what the message is, or is it more about just the act of some kind of conversation, or wanting to be heard and trying to rekindle that family love connection that existed when that person was alive.
It was lovely. And
Thank
it's
you.
to myself because as a spiritual medium, I do hear them talking.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so funny. But you're right, regardless of any spiritual beliefs, this is why I loved when you when you started writing the letter. I thought, right, excellent. Because this is something I tell people to do all the time. They often want to
Yeah.
ring up and say, can you teach me how to hear spirit? And I just say, just write to them, speak it
Right.
out to them, something like that. Yeah. So let's move on to, let's break just for a second to you. I want to get a bit philosophical here. And
Okay.
I want to ask you, is there a life question that
Mm.
you're still seeking the answer? Is there something out there that you think, I wish I knew the answer to that?
Yeah, I think I've come to a place in my life where I'm fine with not having so many answers. That I used to be very anxious about wanting things to be answered. Um, I mean, I do constantly ask myself how can I incorporate more play into my life in a way that's still productive and meaningful and creates connections with others. I don't mean play just for the sake of like being a deviant and just going after every like a sinful thought that I have. Which, you know, if that's what someone wants to do, okay. But I just mean like being curious and having levity and having a sense of humor. It can be so hard in our society when you are an ambitious person and you also have real life concrete costs of living, right? But you still want to be creative and you still want to make things and you still want to decide what your life is going to be and not just live by a certain pattern that's expected of you. Um, yeah, but in terms of like burning philosophical questions, of course I wonder about the afterlife. But again, like I'm at a point in my life where I'm fine with not knowing and I'm still going to try and live the best way I've figured out how to live at this point. And that's something I want to keep adjusting because I don't think it should remain stagnant. Like there's not just one way for Christine to live. Maybe how Christine lives will change in 5 or 10 years, and that's great. I should be changing. I should be adapting. I do think it's important to ask questions. Maybe some people don't ask enough questions, but again, in terms of answers, I don't need to be satisfied with every little answer or big answer.
I love that. You're basically okay with not knowing some things.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, how do you see the future of filmmaking? You know, there's so much new technology in the world, especially with AI, just to set
Yeah,
this here.
yeah.
I saw something the other day and then in the comments, everybody said, you know, that's AI. It was an owl or something that seemed quite big, but then everybody said, that's not real, that's AI. And I thought, oh, where are we going
Yeah.
with this? So, will it affect filmmaking?
Yeah, I think it will definitely affect filmmaking. I think that I'm going to speak from an American perspective, of course, but I think Hollywood is just not going to be as powerful as it used to be. They're not going to have these companies, the same studios that once controlled so many things. I just don't think they're going to be as strong as they used to be. I think just like with publishing, and the revolution of publishing and so many technologies being made available to everyday people, anyone who had an education or was willing to train themselves could find a way to self-publish a book. I think it's going to be similar with filmmaking, that almost everyone has a smartphone these days. Almost everyone has the tools for video making and video editing. And we've seen with broadcast TV, for instance, that a lot of these shows just don't have the same kind of viewership that they used to, that they're competing with TikTok, they're competing with Instagram and Facebook Reels, and so many other apps. I think with AI, like, artists are going to do what artists have always done. They're going to play with it in some way. They're going to make it part of their practice. They're going to play with it as a medium. AI can mean a lot of different things. So I think there's a lot of experimentation to be had. I think having a traditional like broadcast career or a traditional studio movie career these days is just going to be, I mean, it was always extremely competitive, but I think it's going to be a lot more competitive. But in some ways there's going to be more agency for artists to cultivate their own audiences and to make the work that they want to make and find the people who are going to watch it.
So, do you create something every day?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't consider everything a finished work. But yeah, I typically have a notebook or sketchbook in my bag. I live in New York City, so I am often on the subway. That means a lot of time to doodle or jot things down. I don't have many apps on my phone because I'm constantly taking photos or little video clips. And then in terms of bigger projects, I do have my board at home where I sort of map out with note cards what's what and what I'm going to be finishing in the next quarter or 6 months or year. And I always break the big projects into smaller bits that can be accomplished little by little, day by day, or week by week, month by month, because otherwise it's too overwhelming. But yeah, I mean, I think something that's changed in me in the past several years is I'm fine with something just being part of a process, that it doesn't have to be a finished product that's going to be submitted anywhere, published, shown anywhere. That some things really are just part of brainstorming or part of play and part of fun.
Great. And, speaking of which, I want, because, displaying art, Quail Bell. Now, this is a creative studio in Brooklyn. I mean, you live in one of the best cities in the world. I do love New York. Years ago, every British person would go to New York. It used to be really cheap. You could fly to New York for a weekend for like £300. I don't know what that is in dollars, but
I'm not good at conversion.
I don't know, but you could fly. You could go over for a
Yeah.
weekend. People used to go to New York to shop.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. So you live in a city that's amazing. Brooklyn, fantastic. So tell us about Quail Bell and what's happening. Anything new going on? What do people need to know?
Yeah, so I use Quellbell to make almost everything that I do. It originally started as a magazine that I did in college, Quellbell Magazine, and that is still a magazine that you can check out online today, quellbellmagazine.com. We used to put out print editions. Now we just put out a book every like year or so of kind of the best based on a theme. We had the book Lunar Phoenix most recently, and that came out of quarantine work and the George Floyd protests. So it was guest curated by 3 Black editors who wanted to choose stories, poems, and essays by Black writers living today. And yeah, I mean, like the film 5 Ways I Didn't Marry You, or Sirena's Gallery, or my play, Mi Abuela Queen of Nightmares, those were all made under the Quellbell umbrella. So I use it as a means of working with collaborators. I use it as a means of applying for grants. I use it as a means of just kind of bringing everything that I do together in one place.
Excellent. And you've just summed up a bit more about a life of a writer, a life of a creative, applying for grants,
Yes.
submitting work, yes, working
Yes.
every day, creating every day. You've just described kind of your day to day and what it involves.
Yes.
And collaborations, looking out for the right collaborations as well. I suppose that's a part of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because even with a book, there's more than one person involved. I might write it, but I'm probably going to be working with an editor or designer and some kind of marketing person at minimum. Um, I have not published a book since, I believe it was 2020. Yeah, I had the release of Naomi and the Reckoning and Heaven is a Photograph at almost the same time. It was not supposed to work out that way, but that is what ended up happening. And with Naomi and the Reckoning, that went through Finishing Line Press, and they had their whole process of working with an editor, working with a designer. Even though they ended up using my art for the cover, I still worked with a designer to do the typography, typeset everything. And it was the same thing with Heaven is a Photograph at Clash Books. I had to work with their designer, work with the editor, work with the person in charge of social media and marketing, and coordinate live readings and live events too.
Let's quantum leap. Some people back there are going, ooh, no, no quantum leaps. Um, let's quantum leap, let's say, not too far, let's say 2025.
Okay.
What is Christine doing?
Oh, well, hopefully more of the same, but just better. So by August 2025, I will have finished my master's at Columbia in documentary filmmaking, and we have a thesis film that we'll be making in order to graduate. And I'm planning to focus on the Mermaid Parade in Brooklyn, which is a queer-friendly parade that takes place in June on the Coney Island boardwalk, and everyone gets to be a mermaid for a day. So this parade has taken place for more than 40 years. It's part of the whole like Coney Island freak show situation they have going on down there. But it's also very inspiring to see people of all ages and body types and races, cultures, genders, everything, and babies even. You'll see from babies to elderly people dressed as mermaids. You'll see men dressed as mermaids, like macho men, right? Um, and I don't know yet because I'm just starting this film if I'm going to be focusing more on like the queer affirmation aspect of the parade, because it does take place in June, so that's during Pride in the United States, and I think most of the world.
Yes.
But
UK as well. Yeah.
uh, and or if I'm going to be focusing more on like the conservation angle, which surprised me, but they do a lot of beach cleanup that's related to this parade. I think I'm more excited about Pride, to be honest, but I also have to see which people emerge, because in documentary filmmaking there's always the aspect of the unknown, and there's always some uncertainty. You don't know which sources are going to pan out. Sometimes people will give you access and then they'll take it away for any number of reasons, or they'll have like some life catastrophe, some reason that they can't participate anymore. But I'm very optimistic and I'm very excited about whatever this film will become.
Sounds really exciting, though.
Thanks.
Any new projects that the listeners need to know about with you?
We'll definitely always check out YouTube at Stoddard Says. I do run a talk show, Badass Lady Folk, and I have different incredible women and non-binary people from New York City come onto the show. We record in Midtown Manhattan at M&N, so we get to have an in-person, live, unedited conversation that airs on the M&N network and is made available on my YouTube after the fact. And definitely I'm always seeking nominations for that. And really, I'll just say it again, 5 Ways I Didn't Marry You is coming out in December. Definitely watch that. The latest feature-length film project on YouTube is Her Garden, and that's something I made with Megan J. Meehan and Jacob Barron. It's extremely experimental compared to 5 Ways I Didn't Marry You, but there's also love in there. There are mermaids. It's a very artistic film.
Excellent. No, mermaid is a win-win in any situation, in any project, anything. Yes, mermaids, more please. Yes. Oh, Christine, I mean, your life is fascinating because you pretty much do what you set out to do. You are doing what you set out to do.
Yeah, thank you. Trying. I have to keep going. Sometimes it feels like a marathon, but yeah, I'm still doing it.
And most artists say that. I interviewed a comedian recently. It seems like an ongoing thing, but that is life, isn't it? That's what we do. It's a profession, and many people don't get to actually do what they would what their soul is drawing them to do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, is there anything else I'm missing? I'll cut this question out, but anything else that you want me to mention?
Honestly, no. I feel like that's good.
Well, where can people,
Great.
besides your YouTube channel,
Yes.
what's the best place? I know you've got your website, but tell us about Instagram, Facebook, all of it. Some people are on some not others.
Yeah, sure. So on Instagram, I'm also at Stoddard Says, and on Facebook, I have a public profile page, Stoddard Says, as well. I am not accepting Facebook requests from my private page. I have that pretty explicitly on there, but definitely you can follow my public figure page.
Yes, and also the link to the books is at Wordsmith Christine. So
yes.
I will link those books as well. Thank you so much for joining me. Good luck with everything. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep creating, because that gives us a space to escape. And we need it. Everybody needs it now and then. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Inquisitive Rin podcast. I hope you found it insightful. If you did, I'd love for you to share it with a friend who might enjoy it too. Don't forget to share it on social media. It really helps us reach more people who resonate with our content. If you haven't already, make sure to follow the show. It's the best way to stay connected and help our Inquisitive Rin community grow. I'd also love to hear from you. Leave a rating and a review to let me know your thoughts, and be sure to follow so you never miss the latest episodes or behind the scenes content from the Inquisitive Rin. Thanks again, and as always, stay curious.